and welcome to another edition of Chattin' with Janine. I'm your host, State Representative Janine Nodder. In the House, my role is House Majority Whip, and my guest this week is the Deputy Majority Leader, Representative Jim Colfault. Welcome, Jim.
Very nice to be here. Thanks.
Welcome to Merrimack, and thanks for being on the show. I just did a show, I think it might still be running, on a trip to the border. The southern border.
I was there, yes.
Yeah,
that was a great trip.
I went twice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
I had some guests on from the second trip, as well as one of our hosts from the first trip.
Mm-hmm.
And you were on the first trip, so I was going to show a couple of pictures just to show you. You're right there in the middle.
There I am.
And we're actually standing on the wall, and Scott Wallace there, Representative Wallace, is climbing the wall. We're going to break into the United States. And he said, well, I had to get back in the country somehow. But actually, he didn't have to do that because it's wide open. And I chose this picture because you're in this one as well as our friend. After this picture, his name is Jose Grande. He just is so tall. And I don't think he's much taller than you are, but he looks humongous in this picture.
In that picture, for some reason, he looks really, really tall.
So another chance to show a picture of Jose Grande.
Mm.
And yeah, that's the border. But today's episode is not about the border. We're talking about spelling for communication.
Exactly. So I first heard about spelling to communicate probably about a year and a half ago. So a friend of mine who lives in my district just down the street texted me and said, Jim, I've got to talk to you about my daughter. And her daughter is 19 years old. She has autism. And I texted back, well, I'm sorry to hear you're having difficulties. You know, let's talk as soon as possible. And she texted back, she said, no, I'm not having difficulties. Miracles are happening. Really, really amazing things. So we got on the phone a couple days, day or two later, and she started to tell me what had been happening. She said, I have been homeschooling my daughter for a while. I've been using a third grade curriculum, and all of a sudden I realized I should be using a college curriculum. She is brilliant.
A lot of autistic children are.
And what was missing is that her daughter has what's called apraxia. Apraxia basically means that you don't have the fine motor skills to produce speech, or you can't produce reliable speech on a regular basis.
Does that also mean weak muscles?
Well, not necessarily, but what happens is that a lot of people with autism also just can't speak or can't speak reliably. And that has always been, people have misinterpreted that to mean that, that there's not a lot of thinking going on, when in fact, what they're finding is that people who lack the ability to speak understand everything that's going on. And not only do they understand it all, they're taking it all in at a level that is pretty amazing, actually. So I was hearing about Grace, the daughter, and Grace's journey in learning to communicate through spelling. And so there's a woman in Atlanta named Elizabeth Vossler, and she has founded an organization called the International Association for Spelling to Communicate. It's i-asc.org. And she developed this methodology in which she determined that the problem is not a cognitive impairment, the problem is a motor skills issue. So she started to work with people with autism and apraxia and said, I want to teach them how to point to letters on a letterboard. And so these are large letters, and it's a large kind of stencil board. So they poke through the letter with a pencil. And by doing that, they can learn to spell. Well, some people have gotten so good at this that at this point they're using a keyboard. There's one young man who has he's published 3 books now. His author page on Amazon says, until 3 years ago, everyone thought that I had the intellect of a toddler. Now he's got 3 books. He publishes a blog. and it's the poetry he writes, the things that he writes on the blog are just heartwarming, really amazing stuff. There's a young woman who lives in New Jersey, went to college in Florida, graduated valedictorian, has never been able to speak.
Wow.
But she speaks using a keyboard on like an iPad.
Wow.
So what they're finding is that there are a lot of people who have autism and apraxia who have essentially been kind of locked in a prison their whole life, unable to communicate. There's a gentleman by the name of J.B. Handley who has written a book, and it's called Underestimated. And his son has autism, and somebody had come along and said, you know, you really ought to check this out, and he took his son to a Spelling to Communicate practitioner. Now, I think parents of people with autism often get frustrated because they've heard it before. They've heard it over and over again. This is the thing that's going to, you know, make a huge breakthrough, a huge difference in your lives, and they're often disappointed. So he went into this with that kind of thought that, okay, well, I'll give it a try because my friend whose son is autistic has said it's really amazing. And as soon as they went in, he said the first thing that was different was that the practitioner was not talking to him as the father. The practitioner was talking to his son. And she said, I know you're smart. I know you understand everything I'm saying. And we are going to teach you to communicate. So they started to go through a few sessions. And he said when it really hit me was when she was doing a lesson about animals and what animals eat. And there was a question about, I guess there was something about a carnivore was part of the lesson, the word carnivore, or
a
meat eater, yes. And so she asked, the practitioner asked the young man, Jamie, what's the opposite of a carnivore? And he spelled it out, herbivore.
Yeah.
And the father said, well, wait a minute. That wasn't in the lesson. And she said, well, yeah, that's what we call a prior knowledge question. He already knew that. He said, that's when the light bulb went on, and I realized that there's something incredible going on here. So they went on to make a movie. The movie is called Spellers. So it's, if you go to spellersthemovie.com, you can hear about that. But they went on to create this movie, and it's really, I mean, it won the best documentary at the Phoenix Film Festival this past April. There have been a number of showings around New Hampshire. There was one in Nashua. We did one in Wilton. Health Freedom New Hampshire did one in Wilton. The Council on Disabilities put on a showing in Concord. So it's been out there. People can watch it online. But it kind of takes people through this journey of going from I've been frustrated or I wish I could help my son or daughter to, oh my goodness, life has changed. All of a sudden I feel like, you know, my son who I never thought could live without me, now I have some hope that there's something after all that.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing.
It's a remarkable thing. And the more if you read the book, if you see the movie, the more you hear about it, the more you realize that this is it's a complete game changer for the people who've gone through it. So.
And there's so many kids have autism today. I did a show on autism once, but it's been years. I think we were still taping at the high school at the time, and my big question was why do so many kids have autism, and we still don't know. Some say it's the vaccinations, others say it's not. I mean, some think it's all the chemicals in the food, all the processed food. So who knows? I just know that there's an awful lot of kids with autism or Asperger's. I even have family members with it.
Yeah.
So, do you have a legislation to go with this?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yes, so the frustration I was hearing from parents in the autism community was, this is phenomenal, but it's private pay, and we really need to get this into the schools. And in fact, in people I've spoken to around the country who are very involved with Spelling to Communicate have said, we really need to get this into the schools. So what I'm doing is sort of a baby step in that direction. I filed legislation that creates a pilot program. And the idea here would be to take a kind of limited amount of money and create a pilot program to offer grants. Now, the structure of this will be that parents can apply for the grant. So it doesn't have to be initiated by the school district per se, but it would then be funded through the school district. So the grant would go to the school district and they would oversee hiring the certified practitioner who could help offer the Spelling to Communicate services. So, you know, one of the criticisms of Spelling to Communicate is that we don't have hundreds of thousands of people who've done it, and we don't have all these huge data sets and studies to show that it works.
Anywhere? Any other states?
No, not yet. So if we do it, we will be the first state, I think, to have it officially in the public schools. Or homeschool, or you know, wherever a student is getting their education. But you know, it's this would be the first state to do it, and part of what I would like to do is to offer that choice to parents. Part of what I would also like to do is, although we don't have, you know, exhaustive studies with, you know, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of participants, everybody who's been through this says the results speak for themselves. It's amazing, it's life-changing, we just need to be doing it. And so my hope is that by just doing it, that some of the special education professionals in the schools will have an opportunity to see it and to see the difference it can make in students' lives.
I'm going to be telling someone about this show. Her name is Maureen Tracy, and I had her on the show it was a couple months ago. She's an advocate for children with disabilities. But you know, we call autism a disability, but it seems like every child who has autism is brilliant in one way or the other. They just can't get that through. So earlier I was talking about how, you know, people have questioned, is it the shots, is it the chemicals in the processed food? But there's something else out there that makes whatever part of the brain that is excel, and like they're far beyond. My daughter used to babysit a boy. He still lives in town, Darius, and if he's watching, he'll say, "Hey, that's me," and he would ask her questions, you know, like all my kids' birthdays. And then this was years ago, and I ran into him. He still remembers everybody's birthday.
Right. So I'll tell you two stories. One is about Grace, and I mentioned Grace, who lives down the street from me. She was asked recently one of these prior knowledge questions. And the question was, what is the molecule through which genetic traits are passed on? Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of lazy. I would spell out DNA.
Yes.
She spelled out deoxyribonucleic acid. She spelled out the whole thing. So there is a kind of brilliance there that, you know, if we could just give people the freedom to express themselves, the sky's the limit. The second story I'll tell is at the end of the movie, I mentioned J.B. Handley wrote the book. He actually wrote it with his son, Jamie, who is autistic. Near the end of the movie, Jamie is typing on a keyboard and he's communicating that if schools really understood the power of people with autism, they would be tapping into our strengths and working from our strengths, because most autistic kids are doing advanced mathematics by the time they're 3 or 4 years old. He said they'd be tapping into our strengths, and he said, I believe that autistic people are the great innovators of tomorrow if we can just unleash that. So to hear these kinds of things, it just kind of gives me chills, but we need to give them that path to success. So, you know, I'm usually I'm a small government guy. I'm not big into creating new government programs. In this case, I'm saying, let's give people these choices. Let's provide an opening.
It's an investment into our future.
And let's spend money on things that work. And so if we can provide a small pilot program, demonstrate that it works, give them an opportunity to really show how successful this can be, then my hope is it can grow from there.
You know, it's kind of fitting that we're taping this show in Merrimack because Merrimack is known for having a large number of children with disabilities. And people move to Merrimack for the special ed. And when I had Maureen Tracy on, I learned that they're in different schools. Like the ones that have autism are at one school, the ones that have physical disabilities are in another school, ones with behavioral issues are in a third school. So I don't remember which one has the autistic children, but that would be perfect.
Yeah, I actually have spoken to Maureen. It's been a couple of months, but I mentioned this bill, and she said come back and let me know as it moves forward. So I'll have to check in with her.
Yeah, I actually look tall next to Maureen. I love her. Yeah. So the bill's been filed?
The bill has been filed. I just got the language back, and I'm a little bit concerned because if I need to tweak it, I don't know if the Office of Legislative Services is going to have time because they're so busy right now
Oh, I know.
to redraft
Over
it by
800
Friday,
bills.
which is the deadline. But I am working on, now that I have language, I'm working on getting some co-sponsors. My intention is to get some
You could put me on there.
bipartisan co-sponsors. I'd be delighted to have you as a co-sponsor. My hope is to get a bipartisan group of legislators, both senators and House reps, to all be on board co-sponsoring it. And I think this is a truly bipartisan kind of issue, and I think it can change people's lives.
Yes, it doesn't sound like a partisan issue, so I don't see how, I don't think you would have trouble getting co-sponsors for this. So, and then what happens? You alert the school board, or
Well,
because people need to testify.
So I actually, as soon as I filed the legislative service request and gave a title of the bill, I got a call from somebody in the disabilities community here in New Hampshire who said, first of all, they said, is this bill about spelling to communicate? Because that's what it sounds like from the title. And I said yes, and I described what it does. And she said, oh my goodness, this is so exciting. This is huge.
So do you have, is Grace and the other person you mentioned, are they going to come and testify? And maybe they could do a demonstration.
They will be there. I don't know whether Grace will testify or not. I have had people from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, California, Georgia, some of whom have said, we will make the trip. We'll be there. There's one young man who's early 20s probably has learned to communicate by spelling. His name is Vincent. He's actually in the movie. He types on a keyboard. He's a blogger now. He's very interested in politics, and he says he wants to be a U.S. senator. So I'm sure he would enjoy coming and meeting everybody and having an opportunity to testify on this bill.
I look forward to meeting him. So I presume it'll go to the Education Committee.
I am assuming it will go to the Education Committee because the intention is to have this administered by the Department of Education. I have had some people ask me, well, there are adults who are no longer in school who have autism. What about them? And my answer to that is that this is available to them in order to make it available to more people. I think the best, most direct and fastest path is to do that through the schools and kind of get it into the schools. So I would definitely support expanding it at some point to see how can we get it to more people.
So you mentioned a pilot program, but there must be some kind of curriculum already in place if there are people out there who have used it and have had success.
Well, there's a methodology. It requires very specific training. So people have to apply for that training and then go through the course of instruction and then get certified. Usually they're also going to be coached by somebody who is a trained practitioner, because there's a lot of nuance to sort of reading someone's behavior and sort of helping them based on where they are. Sort of how is this person doing? When are they frustrated? How do I get them to kind of reset where they are and start, try again? So there's a method to it, and that's available to anybody who wants it today. It's private pay. My hope, my expectation is that we can get more people trained as practitioners, that we can get more people doing this through the schools, and if they find it to be successful, which I'm very confident they will, then grow that and create more successes. But what I'm hearing over and over again is that parents of people with autism will trust and believe that which they're hearing from other parents of people with autism. And so everything that I've heard from anybody who's been involved with this so far is that it has just been transformative.
Wow. So I presume it's going to have a fiscal note because
I'm sure it'll
there's
have
money.
a fiscal
So it'll go to
note.
2 committees, and that makes it an early bill, so it will be heard in January.
Right.
The website, you said i-asc.org. That's where the viewers can go to learn more about
That's
it?
where you could learn more about Spelling to Communicate, and the International Association for Spelling to Communicate. That is the organization founded by Elizabeth Vossler, who is the sort of the brains behind creating this methodology. But there are a number of other people who've taken this and run with it, and so the movie, spellersthemovie.com, is another one. That's where you can really see it in action. You can see the effect that it's had on people's lives. And then
you mentioned Vincent, somebody you know named Vincent,
right, so
is in
Vincent
the movie?
is in the movie. His mother, Honey Rinicella, is in the movie as well.
Are they from New Hampshire?
No, they're from Philadelphia, but they're good friends with Beth and Grace, who live down the street from me. Then there's a woman in the movie from California who's done a lot of, Dawn Marie, I'm forgetting her last name right now, but Dawn Marie has done this with a lot of kids and is opening up several new centers around California and around the country.
Do you know what part of California?
I don't recall right
Northern,
now.
Southern? I'm from
Don't
Southern
know.
California, so that's
Don't
why
know.
I always ask.
So they're also going to be they're also able to offer coaching to new practitioners using video, so they
Right.
can help.
Practitioners, I'm thinking medical doctor practitioner, nurse practitioner. Is that what you mean or no?
No, in this case, anybody can become a practitioner. You have to be accepted into the program, and
How long does the training typically
I think
take?
I think it's a couple of months, if I'm not mistaken, or I think it costs about $3,000, and it's either a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But they want that person to then work with an experienced practitioner, so that they can more quickly come up to speed.
Do you know if there's a practitioner here in New Hampshire?
There are several. In fact, one of them I was hoping we could get on the show today. Unfortunately, she had a conflict and was not able to join us. But
Well, this would be a good show to do a follow-up, like after the hearing, and find out how it went and how many
Okay.
people showed up to testify. And it'd be interesting to see if there's anybody against it.
And now that you mention that, I will say there are some groups that are against it. There is the speech and language pathologists tend to be against it, but much of that is based on a misconception. And the misconception is that this is a rehash of something that was introduced years ago and was subsequently discredited. And that was called facilitated communication. And I think a lot of people got excited about facilitated communication when it was first introduced, and then it really turned out to not be effective, and it turned out to be just not authentically
So this
helping
is not
people.
the same thing,
This
but
is
it's
This is different from that, and in fact, when people ask families, when people ask autistic people, so what do you think about that statement, that this is not real? You can see it in the end of the movie where
They could
this young
probably
man
type out
he types in
$8 words.
He actually types in, he says, they're delusional. So you
Good
see
kid.
this kid who's never been able to communicate before in his life, and he's typing out, they are
They're
delusional.
Love it.
I think that speaks for itself. So I think, in fact, one of the practitioners that I know is also a speech pathologist, and she said, this is real, this is amazing, and it's just a matter of time before more people embrace it. So my bill is intended to be kind of an accelerator for that process, and so I'm hopeful.
Well, Ash, I am too. So thank you so much for coming to Merrimack to tell me about that. And that was, wow, look at the time. We have 90 seconds left. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I guess I would just say that if people are interested in getting involved, they can email me. They can email me at staterep@jimkofalt.com. So that's staterep@jimkofalt.com. And I can try to answer any questions for you and see how we can get you involved in the process.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show.
I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.